All right. And let me go over to my channel. Oh, perfect. It just clicked me right in there. Let me put that here. This is right. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. We should be live. Yeah, we are live. And da-da-da. You guys need to let me know if you can hear me and how the sound is. Hey, Caroline, how does it sound to you? Madison, can you say something for me? The way you would normally say something.
Hi, friends.
That is what you normally say when you start a video.
Yeah.
You start off, hi, friends, just like that.
Am I good?
Okay. Oh, awesome. New Jersey Rock Girl, Allison, Red Chariot, all say that the sound is good. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, good.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, you're welcome, H2O dog lover. I'm happy to give you another day of awesome, wonderful speakers. Cool. And you guys can hear Madison okay? How was she? How was her sound?
Am I sounding all right?
Okay. Yeah, right. Collard green. She does look amazing. She always
Oh,
does.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Well, it looks like we're good to go on sound. I'm super grateful to be here with you guys. My name is Moon, and I am a twin flame channel and Western astrologer. And this is day 4 of Shadow Work Week, where I've brought together some of the best in mediums, coaches, readers to talk about confronting the shadow on the light worker path and twin flame path. I am thrilled to be able to share with you today for day 4 our guest, Madison of Eso Tarot. And many of you know her. Anyone who knows her and has listened to her work absolutely adores her. There's something always really magical about her work and her readings and the way that she delivers content here on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed, I highly recommend it. The link will be below the video, and I'll place it here in the chat momentarily. But if you're new to getting to know her, she first got into tarot because she said she felt deeply lost in the world. And she stumbled across a tarot video on YouTube, and the unsettling accuracy, which many of you are familiar with, like, oh my gosh, how does this person know my whole life? The accuracy pushed her to get a deck for herself. Hand raised. Who else has done that? I know I have. After reading for herself and others for a little while, she felt the internal nudge to start a YouTube channel. And when she first started the channel, no clue what to expect. Her only goal was to help others. And she knew that if she could just help one person, she would have been successful. But since then, her channel has exploded. She reads for close to 300,000 people every week all over the globe. And she said the biggest thing she's learned from this is that the human condition is truly universal. No matter your ethnicity, culture, background, country, we all have experiences that we can relate to and empathize with. And she's made it her mission to share the magic of tarot and help and hope of a new tomorrow with everyone who comes to her channel. So, Madison, welcome. It
Thank
is
you so
so
much.
nice to be here with you.
I'm so excited to be here and to be a part of Shadow Work Week. I feel like this is so important, and I'm just honored to be involved.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let me just drop your link here into the chat. So if you guys are new to Eso Tarot, you can find her at that link right there. The reason why I invited her on, and what I noticed, and if you guys kind of paid attention to the lineup, what you would have seen is that today we're going to have a conversation with Madison specifically about examining and understanding other people's shadow. But then on Sunday, we're going to have a conversation with Allie's tarot about examining and understanding our own shadow, because if it's happening over there, it's very likely happening over here. And some of the very things that annoy us or frustrate us or dig into, our side with other people and how they're presenting and showing up are some of the very same things that are happening in our own blind spots. And so hopefully you'll be able to be with us for both interviews, or at least take the time to listen to both, so that you have the opportunity to grow with the information from both. All right. So I'm really curious, Madison, if you can tell us. There's a lot of channels out here on YouTube that really work to deliver to us the most triggering, the most salacious, the most painful bits of information about people that we might be interested in, things that confirm our worst fears. And then we call that somehow being intuitive. I think personally, that's a very toxic use of tarot, a very toxic use of the gift. But I'm curious, what is the difference between using tarot toxically versus transcendence? Because I've noticed you have a very different way of using this.
I think it's really, really important to look at your intentions when you're using tarot in general. Why are you asking about a topic? Why are you truly curious about it? Because I do think that there is almost a tendency sometimes where you might not be looking into something for the right reasons. But that's always an opportunity too, as well, to like kind of realize where maybe your outlook may have been sort of toxic. But I think the biggest thing when you're looking at someone else's shadow is not to condemn or judge, or I don't know, I guess I can't think of the right word, but when you're looking at someone else's shadow, it should be for either understanding them better, to have more compassion for their situation, to understand why, but not necessarily come from a perspective of like wanting to fix something, for example. I also think too, if you're not looking at your own shadow, which obviously you guys are going to be doing later with Ali, but if you're not looking at your shadow and just looking at someone else's, you're just throwing stones from a glass house. So I definitely think intent is the biggest thing in general, but sometimes, you kind of want to ride the line. Are you just being nosy and trying to get into someone's business, or are you trying to understand something so that you can have more compassion or more empathy or more understanding for why someone might act the way they do, or why someone might not act at all in certain circumstances?
Amazing. I really appreciate that. And I love that. Yes, intention is definitely the difference. Um, but I like that your if you've ever listened to any of Madison's work, the kind of question that she always asks is, well, why? Why is this person like this? What is going on with this person? Let's look at what may be going on behind the scenes. And I'm curious, why do you think it's important to do that, and important to understand the hidden energies surrounding the people that you might be interacting with?
I feel like it's just so easy to write things and people off. My dad says this all the time, but like, when we assume things, you just make an ass out of you and me. And I think it can be kind of dehumanizing sometimes, the way that we condemn people to their actions. Especially, I feel like just now, kind of in the recent present, has the media and the general public started understanding that everybody has depth to them. I feel like it's kind of a normal thing to look at people from a very superficial perspective and not look at their humanity, and look at the fact that everybody has light and dark, and everybody has something that they're going through. And I guess for me, if you're just explaining the behavior and not explaining the underlying reasons why, that can be a bit maddening. And also it can lead you to jump to conclusions about why that action is happening. You might take it more personally. And the truth is usually like when someone acts negatively towards us, it's usually not as personal as we're taking it. And I think that when we can understand someone's struggle and understand what someone else is going through, we can have more empathy for them. We can not be so triggered or upset by their actions and take them very personally. And I think it just kind of opens things up to help both people kind of see, okay, well, you've got this going on, I've got this going on, and have empathy for that. And also just have empathy for the fact that life is not cut and dry. It's not black and white. Like there's complexities to everything. Everything is gray. So I think it's important to understand those hidden energies as well, because if there is something causing certain actions, it's important to be able to protect yourself. For example, if, part of someone's shadow is related to another person, if they're still connected to that person, you might want to know that maybe it's time for you to keep some distance or stay away from that, because you just never know what someone else is involved in. And yeah, I guess just understanding the underlying things behind it, I think is a lot more helpful to see someone as a more complete human instead of looking at them through rose-colored glasses or poop-colored glasses.
Did you just say poop colored glasses?
I was going to say something more. I switched it at the last minute.
Ah, that's funny. I love it. Okay, so I noticed that you read in layers, and like anytime you pull up a reading dealing with two different people, you or with yourself and another person, you never just look at that person's energy and pull from that person's energy. You always tend to do your side and their side. So I guess I'm curious, talk to us about these layers that you use and how the layers can help us understand the shadow.
Well, I just always feel like there's more to the story. And I guess I'm kind of like nosy and detail oriented. So I like to just have as much information as possible. Because when you're looking at someone's feelings or someone's actions, when you can understand what's going on beneath that, what's going on in their life, one, it kind of helps you understand the perspective that they're coming from and why they may or may not do something. Because energy is always shifting as well. And I think that when we get so focused on the other, we may not realize how our energy could be triggering their shadows or triggering what's going on with them. So when you're able to look at both sides, you can also look at what you're going through, not only to kind of confirm that it's your reading. I think that one of the biggest reasons why I started doing those energy checks was to help people that maybe don't trust their intuition or don't trust their ability to know whether a reading is for them or not, to be able to say, okay, yeah, like this is my reading. But it also gives you the opportunity to see where maybe your shadow and their shadow lines up and how they manifest. Because oftentimes, especially with like divine counterparts and things like that, you've got the same shadows or similar shadows, but maybe they manifest in totally different ways. And I think it can just be, I'm just interested in like dynamics between people. I just find it very fascinating. And so for me, it's kind of like a little bit of a selfish thing where like, I'm like, I want to know what's going on. But then also I feel like it's helpful for people to see their energy deconstructed as well as their person's energy, because I do think as well, people can kind of come from the perspective of like, oh, well, you're just telling me what I want to hear. You just want to say the positive things or things like that. And I'm not, I'm just, obviously always saying what I feel called to. But I think when people feel themselves read as well, it's like they can trust the information that they're getting better. And I feel like, nobody would want to be condemned for their actions and be completely misunderstood as to why. And, be villainized for something, because everybody has reasons behind it. Everybody has a deeper story. And I think once you see people's story, you can have a lot more compassion for what they've gone through. And when you're just looking at the isolated action, it's very easy to demonize or villainize someone. And I just don't like that, because I think that we all have so much more complexity to us that we don't always see or understand about others.
I love that. So there seems to be like some core concepts that you use as frameworks for when you read. Like one of them is like, there's always more to the story.
Mhm.
There's always a reason for people's action or inaction that can be understood by other people, by the people around us.
Mhm.
And what somebody may be doing, even if I don't get it, it may, if I can understand it, it can help me to have compassion.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would say kind of rests in the realm of like core beliefs for you?
Um, that's a good question. I think one of the things that I believe is that I don't know everything, and I always try to recognize like that my perspective of someone else is never going to be the full picture. Like even my own experience, I don't fully understand myself. And I think it's important to remember that when you're looking at other people's energies as well and you're digging deeper into those layers, they may not be conscious of those layers. They may not be aware of those wounds. And so when you're looking at someone else, I always think it's just important to like recognize them as an individual and not write them off as something, write them off as one experience or things like that. I try to see everyone as like their own expression of the universe, having their own human experience, and to have respect for that, even if it's not the healthiest expression or the safest expression. I think we all have wounds and flaws, and we all have power around who we associate ourselves with. And I think it's just important to have more awareness around yourself and be responsible for yourself first. And if you are working on yourself, then I think it's a lot easier to have just compassion for others. But yeah, I think I try to come from a more compassionate place first and foremost, and just recognize that even what I'm pulling through may not be the full story, may not even come close to the reasons behind something, but I just try my best to make things as understandable for others as possible and help people look at afflictions or shadows or wounds, not from a, oh, pity this person, or, oh, this person's bad, but from a, okay, this person's doing this thing. You don't need to make judgments about it. It's just awareness. And here might be the reasons why. And what you do with that information is up to you.
Amazing. And I love that because sometimes we might be ready to take an action or response without necessarily knowing the full story.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can understand the full story, it can allow us to take that action or response in a way that really is mutually compassionate, not just self compassionate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into some of the things that people kind of traditionally look at in the tarot and they're like, oh no, that is dark energy. That is shadow energy. There is something wrong with this person. Cards that we tend to normally associate with shadow, let's see, Seven of Swords, Major Arcana the Devil. We talk about what are some of the other ones, the other cards that people are kind of get red flaggy about?
The Five of Swords as
Mhm.
well, I would say, is a big one. Five of Wands. Um, Really any of the court cards in reverse. I think the pages get a bad rep sometimes because they tend to be a more immature energy. Um, I would say in terms of cups, Eight of Cups, I think sometimes people interpret that a little bit negatively, like that might be someone moving on or something like that. But I mean, really every single card has a positive and negative like translation. I mean, the thing with tarot is that it is so subjective and so based in, the reading and like what are the other cards, and yeah, it just you can pretty much twist anything anyway. But I definitely think the devil gets an unfair bad rep because there's so much more to that card than just negative energies. And honestly, oftentimes when I get it, I don't interpret it as like evil, bad, but maybe more like vices or afflictions or addictions or things that were chained to. But, the devil has, really positive connotations in the sense that while it does deal with a lot of the shadow, there's a lot of growth to be had with that card, a lot of freedom and understanding the devil card, because it really highlights a lot of the things that hold us back from actualizing ourselves and understanding ourselves on a deeper level.
Wow. I love that. Okay. So I think you brought some decks with you today. Which ones did you bring?
So I brought a few Oracle decks. They're not tarot decks, but I did want to highlight these because I found them to be helpful in terms of understanding shadows. Like, the guidebooks are pretty thorough. And I think when it comes to trying to understand someone else's shadow, if you're doing it by yourself, I would say first and foremost, you might want to get a personal reading when you're asking about someone else's shadow, because depending on how close you are to them or how emotionally tied you are to them, it may be hard for you to interpret those things accurately, or interpret those things without getting triggered or getting an emotional response. But when it does come to reading shadows, I think Oracle decks can be very helpful. So one of them that I do have is the Dark Mirror Oracle cards by Lauren Sava. I'll put that up there. And then two others that I found to be very, very helpful, especially because they divide things into feminine and masculine energies, is Gods and Titans by Stacey DeMarco. So this kind of has more like masculine energies associated to it. And you also get to learn about like different gods and deities and things like that from cultures. And then the feminine version is Goddesses and Sirens by the same author. And in each of these cards in the guidebook, it goes into like light and shadow attributes for each card. So it is very helpful in terms of like seeing how, for example, like if one shadow that you can see in the devil card could be like, the light attribute could be, oh, this person is very, very hardworking. They're very dedicated to their career. Well, the shadow might be they're a workaholic. They use work to escape. Things like that. There's really just kind of light and shadow for any energy. And it's kind of up to your awareness and your understanding of those energies, and also the resources that you can find to help you kind of understand what might be going on.
So I notice on your channel, you never do like straight tarot. You always do tarot with some sort of oracle and or message deck. And you often will anchor, especially when you're doing readings about yourself and another person. You won't even start with tarot. You'll start with oracle. Why is that?
I like them. I like them. Because tarot is structured, and typically, while there might be a little bit of extras, like sometimes there will be in certain decks like extra major arcanas. I like that oracle decks are a free for all, and I also like how oracle decks can kind of clarify what certain interpretations in a tarot deck I might want to use, or I don't know. I just enjoy them. That's the main reason. But yeah, I feel like they give information that a straight tarot deck may not necessarily give. And I also like to being able to combine like different decks and things like that, and seeing all of the synchronicities and like colors and things like that. I just feel like oracles can add a lot of layers, add a lot of depth to a tarot reading. And yeah, mainly I just like it, but I also think that there's a lot of valuable information that can come from them. And I don't know, I'm just extra, I guess is the answer.
I love it. Well, I think the cool thing about that though is that when you get that context from, the oracle cards in any capacity to start the reading, it helps you understand how to interpret what may come out through the tarot, right?
Yes.
It gives you a big picture of you always I also notice, and this is common, you'll look for the connecting energy or the mutual energy between two people, and that also can let us know how to see the shadow. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If it's because it's not just the individuals are engaging in some way, and how are they engaging? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Is it a mixture of both? That can definitely be very helpful, because you know when two people are triggered by one another or are afraid of one another or just maybe nervous, we can act in ways that would be not typical to us just because we, are affected by the person, or maybe we're worried that the person's going to act out towards us. Like there's just so many variables and so many factors. And I think the more you kind of dig into all those factors and all those variables, the better full picture you can get of a situation.
Amazing. Okay, so if somebody wanted to kind of start to work on this at home by themselves, can you give us like a basic spread and positions and just kind of like, here's how I would set it up. Here are the questions that I would ask. If you're at home and you're just trying to understand someone you love, here are the questions I would ask.
So I would definitely say, like, for example, I think spreads are very important for beginners. I don't really use spreads in like my readings or in my personal life, but honestly, I'm usually like just communicating with my guides. Like they kind of yell at me sometimes. They're like, the cards are just a middleman. Like stop. Like just you're giving yourself extra steps when you don't need to. But when you're reading for yourself, I definitely think the more specific you can be, the more helpful it is. Questions, one thing that I like to remind people is that you can make your own spreads, but if you're having trouble knowing what to ask, Pinterest is a great place to look for spreads. The internet in general, like there's tons of different spreads out there, and you can find and kind of tailor it to what you want. But I think like big questions to ask would be, if you're asking about yourself, like what is my shadow that I need to be aware of? But when you're asking about another person, you might say, why did they act in this way towards me? Or like, what shadow is this action connected to, and why? What do I need to know about this shadow? Like, how can I be supportive to this person when they experience this shadow? And I also like to ask, like, what advice do you have for me when it comes to this? Because I think the biggest thing is, sometimes like when we get that information, we can kind of just take it and run with it and act in whichever way we feel is best. And sometimes it might be more helpful to get like an objective opinion from the deck, from the cards, to see what they say and have that weigh against what you feel is right. Ultimately, you should do what you feel is right. And, it's just card stock at the end of the day. Like, you are in power, you have free will, things like that. Always trust yourself first. But I do think it can be helpful to kind of weigh your perspective with a different perspective, or the perspective that the cards are coming from, and kind of decide how that might help aid what you're currently seeing.
Right on. That's so helpful, right? It's a lot better than what are they thinking and feeling about me right now? And then
Yeah.
leaving it at that. It gives you far more context, far more detail, right?
Yeah. And the thing is too, thoughts and feelings, those change all the time. So, you might check in to someone and they might be thinking not so great things, or feeling not much towards you. And then 2 days later, it's like a completely different energy. And I think it's important to remember that thoughts and feelings don't necessarily translate to action. So they might be thinking and feeling a lot, but may do absolutely nothing. So understanding, like, for example, if somebody's like avoidant, or, understanding attachments, I think can be really helpful as well. Looking into like attachment theory and different psychological theories like that. You can kind of understand what people are predisposed to do just based on their behavior. And the more you look at those things, the more you can kind of see patterns and see like, okay, you can kind of figure out what someone's response is going to be, or what they more likely will do or not do. If that makes sense.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so what was I going to ask? You had mentioned when we talked in your intro, you had said that you had kind of went through your own kind of dark night of the soul moment and picked up a tarot deck. Do you mind sharing just a little bit of that? Bring us into that moment and give us a snapshot.
Oh, well, that dark night was probably like a dark decade. But I guess for me, I was just deeply depressed and anxious. And I hadn't been diagnosed with ADHD at that point. That was a huge thing for me. Like, because before then I was just essentially treating the depression and anxiety were more so like symptoms of my ADHD and less so like the root cause of the problem. So like that's an excellent example where like I was just treating the symptoms of a deeper experience that I was having. But I guess back to the question, I guess I was a psych major and I really just didn't have a way to talk to myself. And I just like remember sitting on like my couch and just being overwhelmed about potentially existing for another like 60 years. And I was just like, I don't
I'm
want to do
only
that.
laughing because that's just really relatable to me.
Yeah, well, it's just like overwhelming. And, it's like at that point, I was probably like, what, 20, 21. And, from most people's perspectives, you'd be like, you're young, go out there and live. And I'm like, I don't want to, I don't like life. Like, I just wasn't having a very good time. And I remember coming across a YouTube tarot video, and I was like, this is probably gonna be bullshit. Like, I don't know, like, and it was super accurate. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should get one of these decks for myself. And then I did. I got a Rider-Waite deck, and after that, kind of the rest was history. It just one thing led to another, and here we are now.
So interesting. And if I may ask, was it a love tarot video? Or did the tarot video say, you might want to look into ADHD?
I wish I could remember. The only thing I can remember was the card deck, because the card decks were really pretty. It was the Guardian Angels Tarot by Radley Valentine. And I just thought it was a really, really beautiful deck. And that's kind of what drew me in. It could have been a monthly prediction. I don't know if it was, yeah, I don't remember at all. I would definitely say if it was or not, but I don't know if it was love, because at that time I didn't really have anyone in my life. I think it was like a predictions or something like that, but yeah, I can't remember. I wish I knew because I would shout them out, but that was so long ago, I can't even remember it.
Totally get it. And offline, like separately, you and I have talked a lot about just what it's like to exist in the public sphere, to share content on YouTube, what the comment section can be like. And I'd be curious if you'd be willing to share just what your personal, like the way you see people deal with and express and manage shadow in their interaction with YouTube comments. Especially on readings.
I would say the vast, not mass, vast majority of people are very, well, that at least that come to my videos are very kind individuals that are seeking a deeper understanding of themselves, seeking a deeper understanding of their person or people in their lives. And I have a lot of people that are like fully transparent, like that are like, some of this I didn't want to hear, but they're kind and grateful, or just like, accepting of whatever messages have to come through. And I think that is probably it's probably, I would say that's kind of like the standard thing, is like most people are not overly upset when they're shown something that maybe they don't like. I think that there are actually a lot of people who would rather be told the truth and like what is actually coming through than just be fed platitudes and like, oh, everything's gonna be fine, like you're good, it's all love and light. Like, I think most people that are seeking these spiritual things and going that spiritual path, they're not here to just love and light it out. They're here to truly understand themselves and evolve and grow as people. And so I think that is definitely reflected. But there certainly are people that act out when they feel triggered, or maybe have issues that have nothing to do with the rating and are just triggered by me or my energy, or just don't like me, which I think is just normal on the internet, and you just got to deal with that. I've definitely seen some bashing of me in other readers' comment sections, not the reader themselves, but like,
oh my gosh,
saying that,
really?
like, they don't like me because I'm too harsh, or things like, everybody has their own judgments, and I'm like,
you harsh? Are you serious?
Apparently, but like that's fine. You know, I'm not going to be the reader for everyone, and I'm not going to be able to help everyone. But I think what I'm just really grateful for is like the vast majority of people that follow me and that are on my channel are dedicated to their own growth and objective enough not to take messages too personally, not and are not going to take something out on to me. I do find that there are sometimes people who leave these like novels where they're just like, well, it's this person's fault because XYZ. And like, I'm like, you don't need to defend your position to me. I'm not here to like, I'm not judging anyone. I'm just reading energy. But I think some people can take it very personally and get their claws out. But, you know, I think what I've learned just through doing this is like, there's always going to be people like that. You can't really help it or change it. But what I am just so grateful for and so appreciative of is like, you know, I have probably one of the best comment sections on the internet, like knock on wood, but like, you know, people are just so generous and so kind. And I think that, you know, the vast majority of people in general tend to be pretty realistic, if not maybe a little bit too hard on themselves. I think it's very common for us to be hard on ourselves, but I do think I see a lot of people where they have a hard time believing the positive things about themselves. And I, you know, hope that I can help with that because I think it's so much easier to look at the things that we don't like about ourselves or that we think are bad about ourselves than all the wonderful attributes that we have too. Because we may have shadows, but we also have a light side, and a lot of good and wonderful things can come from both.
Likewise. And the same about other people. I always find it amusing when I take a stroll into the comment section and I find people who are blameful or self-righteous or finger pointing about you or their person. Um, I'm like, she's reading for a couple 100,000 people. Why on earth do you think this is personal for you? Like, why are you taking this like it's a
Oh,
personal attack?
I actually, for probably a straight month, was harassed by someone who kept saying, like, stop channeling me in your videos. And like, I didn't want to like open an energy channel with that. So I just like didn't interact. I'm like, dude, like literally just don't watch. Like, I don't know who you are, like with peace and love. Like, I'm just reading. Like, and she just was, you're evil and like all this stuff. And I'm like, bro, like all you have to do is like click off the screen, like close your eyes, like go outside, touch some grass. But you know, that's their journey. That's
Touch
their
some
journey.
grass.
And yeah, you just can't let that like it's just more like you just all you
Right.
can do is laugh. Like, I mean, I wish the best for them. I'm not laughing in like a judgmental way, but it's just like, bro, like
Yeah. And so I guess I'm curious, what do you put that down to? Because that's a shadow and a someone who is other than you. Like, how do you, when you see that kind of toxicity and that kind of negativity coming out from people and they just kind of throw it out there in the comments as if they, like you and them have had a personal relationship for years where you can talk to each other about beef. Like, what do you make of that level of shadow work happening in the comments?
well, I definitely kind of come from the perspective of like, because whenever somebody is sending negativity, there's so much more them than it is you. Because I mean, just speaking for myself, I've literally never felt the need to leave a negative comment on somebody's video. And like, I just can't really understand that perspective. And so for me, it's like, well, they must be going through something that compels them to spew negativity. And, you know, I guess I was actually thinking about this last night. Like, you know, when you exist publicly, you become part of someone's like brain space. You become part of someone's experience if they happen to come across you, and whatever their current experience is, if it's very negative, if it's very hateful, it's not very likely they're going to be like, oh, thanks for the video, it's really awesome. They're probably going to be like, you suck and I hate you. So like, you know, I think like it really just depends on the person, but you know, it makes me happy to know that there is a lot of positivity in my space, because it just goes to show that even if there are people struggling, even if there are, which we're all struggling, we're all going through it at some point, you know, people are still generally, at least in my space, predisposed to be at the very least kind and respectful and positive. So I think that speaks a lot to just the general goodness of my collective and how awesome they are.
Yeah, totally. 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 Okay. So now it's you guys' turn. What kind of questions do you have for Madison here? What would you like to know about understanding the shadow and the people that you love, using tarot or even oracle decks or just even your intuition? What would you like her to share? You've got her undivided attention. Let's 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 pick her brain. 108 Fate says those people need some amethyst. Yes, they do. Among other things. I mean,
Oh my,
I've seen it all, like in your comments and everyone's comments, even in mine before I closed them out a while back, where people grossly grossly and dangerously misinterpreted the things that I've said. And I've even seen it recently too.
oh yeah.
As I've opened up comments on certain videos, I'm like, wow, that was a pretty gross and dangerous misinterpretation of things that I have said. But if that's how you need to take it, maybe my channel is just not for you and you don't need to be in my comment section anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I think too, you know, it's like you can deliver a message, but people are still going to hear it however they want to hear it. And I feel like that's just something where you have to surrender it. It's like, I'm not going to spend my freaking Saturday, like, explaining to you my perspective. I've got Sims to play. I got shit to do. Like, I'm not worried about
Sims to play.
like, you know, like I'm like, I feel like I really worried about that for like a long time. And it's just like not worth the stress. And I think that there are people that almost have this entitled expectation that you should cater to them and that you should explain things better, do this or that. And it's just like, and half the time those people don't understand how channeling works or that it's not personal. And it's just not my job. It's not my job. I know what my job description is now, and I'm not doing anything outside of that. I'm not taking people's stress from them. That's not mine to bear.
Preach, sister. All right. So, and it's always nice too, I would say, when you see other people acting out shadow in the comments, when one of your viewers kind of is like, that's not what she said. So maybe you need to reel it in. Like, it's nice when your own viewers are like, maybe you need to rethink the way you're presenting yourself here.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for them because there are just so many like awesome people within my collective that not only are it just so intelligent and insightful, but also, you know, willing to kind of go at bat for me when maybe I wouldn't for myself. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for that because it really just being in, and you'll understand just being in this position, like you really don't want to open yourself up to more hate than already gets spewed your way. And so, yeah, definitely grateful for the kind people out there that help and support me and things like that.
Totally. Angela Giroux asks, what's the best deck to use for shadow work?
Oh gosh, I don't even know if there is a best deck. I will say, like, it is always more helpful to have, I'm guessing she means tarot deck. It is helpful to have a book or a deck with a good guidebook. So if you're looking at shadows related to love, I actually forgot I grabbed this one too. The Enchanted Love Tarot, who's it by Amy Zerner and Monty Farber. This one has a lot of like love related shadows, if that's what you're interested in. I'm trying to think of some other ones like anything that comes in a big ass box is likely going to have a more detailed guidebook, so that can be more helpful. But like, for example, if you have like a standard Rider-Waite, getting a book like, I just heard in my head 78 Degrees of Wisdom, but there's other ones as well, like I talk about them. I have a video. Maybe I should give you the link. It's like reading tarot for beginners, and I kind of go into this. But you don't even need to get in a specific deck. Like if you have a standard Rider-Waite or just any sort of deck, if you just get a book on tarot, typically like a lot of shadows will be shown in reversals, but I try to remind people that like reversals don't necessarily mean like something's negative, but typically in a lot of books you'll see reversals be taken in mostly negative ways, but that can be helpful in helping you understand shadows. But even Biddy Tarot, like I feel like she has a lot of really great information on her website that's free, which is always awesome. That gives a lot of insight to the cards as well. But I guess in terms of decks, like if you're looking at shadow work, like oracle decks, that can be helpful. And really, I would look specifically for decks that have a more detailed guidebook and not just like those little tiny like white ones, because those can just be hard to read and difficult in general. But yeah, I would say like anything that people have already said is pretty informative can be helpful. But I think the biggest thing, honestly, is that you're drawn to the deck and that you like want that deck. I wouldn't get a deck just because it's like informative unless you really, really wanted to get that. But I have like way too many decks. So yeah.
Too funny. I love it. Okay. Semi Precious 007. She asked, what have you realized about the twin flame journey? But I've never seen you post twin stuff on your channel at all. Have I missed it?
Well, I don't explicitly say twin stuff because I think that there's a lot of contentious feelings around that. And I guess for me, I've been maybe more like on the DL about that sort of thing because there are a lot of people that are not twins on my channel. And I feel like that whole world is, well, it's a very like amazing thing. I think that if you are not a twin, it can be very off-putting. And I don't want to alienate anyone. And I also don't want to push something that maybe like other people wouldn't resonate with. I guess it's kind of like, it's a more like, if you know, you know. And like, there are definitely like a lot of twinny things that come through and I'll name them when I see them. But I think one of my biggest fears as a reader is like putting people onto this without them actually experiencing it. And like, I don't want to create any unhealthy attachments or any unhealthy viewpoints of that journey. So I guess it's just kind of something where like in a lot of my connection videos, things like that might come through. But I guess, you know, people have very strong feelings about it. And I am not trying to be out here like creating stress for anyone or creating uncertainty for anyone. It's definitely like my perspective that like it's up to you to decide what your connection is. But I definitely, one of the reasons why I refuse to ever stop doing love readings and why I get almost angry when people kind of give me shit for doing love readings is because a lot of the reason why I do them is for people in these twin situations. I may not say that overtly, but I am now. And that's because it can be one of the most isolating things in the world, and it can make you feel crazy. It can make you feel so alone and make you just completely doubt everything. And there's so little support for people in those situations, and I refuse to be one of those people that alienates them as well, because I would also be alienating myself and denying a part of myself. And I think that people that have not gone through those experiences cannot empathize or understand what that is like. And so for me, I guess I'm just kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place where, you know, I don't want to isolate people that don't understand that, but I also don't want to take away the opportunities for guidance for people that are on that journey.
Such a tight rope. And that brings us to Conscious Connection Tarot's question. How can I break the addiction of needing to watch How Does My Person Feel About Me readings? When I miss my twins, sometimes that feels like all I have, but I don't want to hurt myself. How can I use those readings responsibly?
So I think that It's different for everyone. The balance is different for everyone. And I almost think too that there is a purpose sometimes in obsessively feeling like you need to watch them. It's almost like you're kind of purging energy. And I think sometimes you almost have to watch videos over and over to lead you to a certain conclusion. Like I remember somebody commented something once, like I was watching them obsessively and it led me to this realization that I needed. And, I think if they help you, then there's nothing wrong with it. If they are not helping you, if they are making you feel insecure, uncertain, if they're bringing you confusion rather than clarity, then I think then that's when you maybe want to taper back. But if they're bringing you comfort, if they're bringing you something that is useful to you, I don't think there's anything wrong with watching like as many as you want. I think the biggest thing is, just being consciously aware of how it's affecting you. And, if you feel like maybe you're watching them too much, maybe just journaling your feelings or like kind of going within and seeing how you can cultivate comfort about that connection yourself, which can be hard. I guess the biggest thing is that I think that there is a section of the spiritual community that is honestly very judgmental and unfair towards people in these situations. And I think that the biggest thing is to not have shame for what you're going through and experiencing, because there are tons of people that just don't understand it because they haven't been through it themselves and they're just, projecting their own judgments onto you. So if what you're consuming is helping you and not hurting you, it's giving you clarity and not giving you confusion, I think there's nothing wrong with consuming it.
I love how you talked about that it gave, like, after a while, after multiple readings, it gave you clarity about something that you really needed to know. My meditation teacher talks about sometimes how when we watch movies, it allows you to quote unquote clear pictures. And clearing pictures is just this concept or idea of moving through a stuck energy to its completion and resolution so that it's not stuck inside of you anymore. And I think sometimes until you actually see the right thing on the screen or hear the right words, it's like that energy keeps hitting up against a glass ceiling until the release occurs. So I love that you said, look, you have to have just at least the level of sovereignty and discernment to know, is this helping me get to something, or is this making me feel crazier and crazier and crazier, causing more insecurity?
And even if you're not sure, I feel like the biggest thing is that you cannot beat yourself up for how you're going about something. We all cope in different ways. And sometimes, these readings are the only support, or like certain channels like that are the only support people going through these journeys have. And so I feel like it's important to remember that you're going through something that not a lot of people can relate to. And if they bring you comfort, if they bring you clarity, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, let people have their judgments. You don't have to tell anyone about your experience. You don't have to tell anyone about what you're going through. And truthfully, sometimes it's better to keep it hidden and keep it something that you only talk about with people that can truly empathize and understand, because there are so many distortions around these sorts of connections. There's a lot of misunderstandings. And I think, the biggest thing is that, like, and I say this like on my channel too, is that like information is useless unless it benefits you. I mean, just use it as an opportunity for information. Don't think of it as like, oh, I'm craving this or I'm desiring this, which you may be like, and that's okay. Like that I have a craving for chocolate right now. Like we all have cravings and desires. That's okay. As long as you're not harming yourself in the process of discovering how you can satiate that, how you can understand that better, do whatever you want. Like there is no standard. There is no right or wrong. It's really just what helps, what doesn't, what harms, what pushes you to grow.
So rich. I used to be a health coach. And when I was working with clients, we had an entire segment of work we did around cravings. And we would start the process by looking at what was consistently craved and then look at what was the nutritional value underneath that the body was actually searching for. And with chocolate, one of the primary things is magnesium. Like the body is magnesium deficient if it's a constant chocolate craving. And so it's a useful thing to do if you're finding yourself in these rabbit holes of like reading after reading after reading, is to just take a minute between each one, what did I get from this that I didn't have before I watched it? What did I need? And just start the process of the self reflection so that you can move yourself through the energy. I think one of the reasons you, me, and Charlotte get along the way we do when we get together is there's this premise of zero make wrong in the way that we work. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with it. There is a purpose in the flow as long as we're willing to kind of sit back and defocus and really pay attention to kind of the spiritual rhythm unfolding in front of us.
Well, I think too, the way that like content is consumed nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of beautiful spiritual insight in any reader's video that anyone can benefit from. But when you're constantly looking for that dopamine hit, you just want more, you might not slow down and actually like, hey, what is this video actually saying to me? Like, it might resonate, but you may not go into like, you may not take notes, or you may not really, it might just pass through you, and you might forget about it. So I think one thing that can be helpful is that when you are watching readings, like, watch it consciously. Don't just watch it to feed that urge. Watch it and see what you can get. Watch it and internalize what's being said. Because I think, I experience this a lot where people ask me to do readings that I did like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, or, my readings are timeless unless stated otherwise. And like, I think, sometimes you can just look at readings as a commodity rather than as a tool to help you. And the more you actually work with it and take out the useful information that's helpful for you, the less reliant you may be on them naturally.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's take a couple of other questions. Do you have room and time, bandwidth?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. A couple of people have asked, there's some people who just seem so on point and seem to really tap into your own situation. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a couple of different reasons. I think your experiences, your life experiences, where you're at in life is partially part of it. I think that certain guides prefer certain readers because they might be able to convey the messages that they want to be conveyed to the people that they're guiding in certain ways. I think that some people were just tapped into people's energy naturally. I also think that when it comes to the person reading or channeling, there's a level of there's a wide level of skill, variety, experience. There's just so many variables. And I think one of the biggest things that I like to say about when it comes to like channeling information is the information coming through me is limited by what I know, my brain's knowledge, and my brain's experience. So, I'm not going to be able to channel like a random Bollywood song and know what that means or says because I don't speak the language and I'm not super involved in that culture. So, maybe people from India may feel like a little bit less connected to my messages because, I have a lot of American pop culture references from like certain decades, that I use. So, people that are in an older demographic than me may not connect to me because they might not trust my age, or because that's something that happens a lot. But I think it's just something where there's a lot of different factors at play. And I think sometimes people change their energy, people go through different things. So I have seen people where they really resonated with a reader and then it maybe changed. And I think that it's just important to recognize like there's no right or wrongs. Like we just like with anyone, we vibe with certain people, we don't with others. And I think we all gravitate towards certain messages. And I think the beauty of having so many readers and having so many people willing to put out messages is that it gives everyone an opportunity to find someone that they connect with. And if they don't, then maybe it's their opportunity to be that person. I think that there's nothing bad that can come from more people being willing to share messages.
Love that. Thank you. Okay. Next question we have here is where is it? I just saw it. Jimmy Stevens Beeman says, I recently coined up the concept triplet flames on ASO's channel. Did you, ASO, find something interesting about it after our comment exchange?
Oh, yeah. I thought it was really fascinating. I haven't been able to, I actually was going to talk to you about this. Um, I find it really fascinating, and I'm definitely not out here like saying that something does or doesn't exist. I think that it's a really interesting concept for me, just because I'm not able to experience it. I don't think it's popped up so much in my life, but I think that if you feel compelled to share more information, you absolutely should, because I do think it is very fascinating. I can't even imagine how much it complicates things, because twins are already super complicated, so adding a third person, a third energy, wow, I cannot even imagine the kind of experiences that entails. But I think it's very interesting, and it also just opens things up for more questions. Why, like, what are the benefits that a triplet flame can bring compared to a twin? Like, what's the purpose for it, and things like that. I think I would really encourage you to talk about your experience more, get as much information as you can, keep track of things, almost kind of like study your experience. And if you have a good relationship with the people that are also in it, get their experiences, document, because there is more information on twins, obviously, and you could be a very, very valuable and helpful resource for people that end up being in the same position as you.
Hmm. Agreed. It's funny because in my last Q&A with Kay coaching program, I did a segment that was exclusively on that with channeled information my guys provided about why there would be triplets and how that works and all of that. It's just what they revealed to me. And I was thinking maybe I should just release that one thing like publicly, that one module publicly, but I haven't seen enough people come through with request for that kind of intel.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing is that it's less common at this time, but that's
It is.
that's a beautiful thing in of itself, because you have the opportunity to really be on the frontier of that and the understanding of that.
Sometimes there's too much information. I'm like, y'all, shut up. I didn't ask for this information. Why are you telling me this?
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't want to know. Do you ever have that experience with your guidance team?
Oh my God. Yeah, when I had this crazy experience when I was flying to New York on 9/11, because my first memory is 9/11, and then I was like, oh my God, I've been conscious for 20 years, like this is crazy. And I was just bombarded with downloads about things that were, I remember I sent Charlotte like these long paragraphs of just stuff, and like I couldn't sleep that night, and like I was like, I have to drive like all the way to the airport, and I can't like, and but I couldn't stop the flow of information. I felt like my crown chakra was on fire, and like oh my God, I slept so well the day after. But like sometimes like you just get hit with those downloads, and like that day was just especially crazy. But yeah, I guess for me, I'm just so curious about everything. I'm like, I can't, I don't tell them to turn it off, because I'm like, oh wait, tell me more. Like I'm always I'm too like nerdy, I guess.
I'm like that too, but I have come to realize like I could like walk off into Neverland like that and really lose track of the earth realms in an unhealthy way. So I'm like, let's moderate the flow, people. Let's moderate the flow. There's one mouth here, and not everybody needs what comes out of it. So let's focus on what's useful.
I guess that's what I'm still learning, because I think with my like ADHD brain, I find like it's just so easy for me to like focus in, and like I don't even think about how other people would. Well, I guess I don't really share my channeling with anyone publicly, so I guess
Oh,
that's
yeah.
also helpful. Pretty much just you and Charlotte. So
I know the email threads are phenomenal. But yeah, clairaudience is a very unique gift, right? Because you really do get a very particular tune in to information in unique ways. That's different. It's different than clairvoyance and clairsentience.
and I sometimes I have a hard time discerning what's claircognizance for me and what's clairaudience, because it's almost like it's
They
like
come in at the same time and the same way, don't they?
yeah.
Me too. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay. H2O dog lover on that note asks, do most collective readings just ebb and flow, or do some of the collective energies hit you like a tsunami?
Every reading is different, but I definitely like, I talk about this, like, I know people really like the personal development readings and things like that, and I enjoy them too. They're very meaningful for me, but I have to do them in smaller doses because, like, as somebody who, just has like mental health issues that I'm constantly, working with and treating, when you're feeling like depression on a collective level, like it's not necessarily something that's easy to just like pass through you and move forward. Like it can affect you, and it does affect me sometimes. And it's like I do want to help others, but sometimes I just feel kind of crappy because I have people like, hounding me about the type of messages that I'm making. And, I just honestly, I would rather be sitting in a good energy of two people that love each other. And like, obviously that's not the case all the time, but like when you're just feeling someone's like issues on a collect, because it's not just someone, it's many people, that collective energy, man, it can wipe you out. But I think it's amazing too because like I get an insight into the lives of the people that watch me in a way that a typical creator wouldn't. Like I get to be a part of their life and like root for them and see them on a more objective scale. Like feeling someone's power, I think is, I wish that's something that I could like translate to other people. Like I wish I could explain like how incredible they are. Like I think sometimes the only thing that sucks is that I'm limited by my vocabulary. Sometimes I feel like there's not a good enough like word or way to translate like the magnitude of someone's being or the beauty that their soul has to offer. But yeah, there's definitely times where like I struggle with certain energies, like they're really heavy, and like I have to breathe a lot, or some energies have given me panic attacks because the energy is just so like frenetic and anxious. But there are some energies that are so beautiful that I just don't want to get out of them, and I just like want to hang out there forever. But yeah, it's a new experience every single time. You kind of never know what you're gonna get. But it definitely is hard in the sense that like if I'm not in I'm not in a good place, if I'm not ready to read, I simply can't. Like I can't be a content farm constantly channeling because it might look like it's easy to just sit there and read cards, but you're literally going through the experience of the people that you're reading for. And and that helps me empathize more deeply with what they're going through. But that shit can be so exhausting sometimes that like, yeah, you gotta have breaks.
Yeah, we were talking about that a lot last night in my meditation class. One of my meditation teachers was talking about how she was doing a trance mediumship experience, and the energy she had opened herself up to was so beautiful and so light, she didn't want to let it go. And the other teacher told her, she's like, you have to let go. You cannot let this energy stay with you. You will lose yourself. Come back. And mediumship can really be a channel, like a difficult channel to work with if you don't know techniques and tools of opening and closing the channel. And that brings us to one of the questions here I saw. I can't remember who wrote it, but Christina Pantaleon. I'm a new reader and my mind always seems to gravitate to the negative sides of these cards. Thoughts you can share?
That's interesting. Well, I guess I wonder, are you reading for other people or are you reading for yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's say it's both. What's the
Well,
answer there you have for her?
so I would say, when you're reading for other people, you definitely want to be aware of, is this information useful? Because, people can look at readings and be like, oh, I got a negative reading, I got a bad reading, but that's just their judgment. Energy is energy. And you might be looking at very necessary things that maybe somebody more positive or more predisposed to look at the lighter side of things wouldn't notice. So I think, there's no reason in shaming yourself. Everybody reads differently. Everybody has a unique way of reading, but I would urge you to challenge yourself, like with every negative interpretation you have, what's a positive solution or a positive that you can note to kind of help balance that out, because it is challenging when you're in those circumstances. People obviously don't necessarily want to hear those certain things. So what I do when I get a lot of those energies is, okay, well, what's the solution for this? What can I leave this person with that will be useful? Because you don't want to just get a reading and be like, your March is gonna suck, sorry sis, like that's not gonna be very helpful. So like, you might be like, okay, so this is going to be a little bit challenging, here are the elements that I'm seeing, but then maybe you want to pull cards on how to overcome that. Or if you just naturally channel them, like, here's the solutions that you can have, here's recommendations for what they can do to offset this, and maybe just add a little bit of support in there as well. I think maybe your style of reading is a very unique opportunity to not only give people things that they wouldn't necessarily notice, but also to challenge yourself to see how maybe you can offset that, maybe sort of what you're perceiving as negative, with something that's going to be more comforting or more helpful and help people push through those energies.
I love it. I love it. The only other thing I would add to that, Christina, is after the negative message comes out, to then ask, you can either add from an oracle deck or a separate deck. I specifically love the Light Seers Tarot for this because there's so much positivity in that deck. Why am I being shown this? And that kind of takes us back to where we started our session with Madison. The topic we started a session with Madison around is she's really good at asking why. Why am I being shown this? What is the issue here? She doesn't just ask what's the issue or what's the answer. She asks, why is this the issue? Why is this the answer? What's happening that may be influencing this particular negative outcome that I may be unaware of? And in doing that, borrowing from Madison's model, you may be able to find your way to, again, that kind of spiritual rhythm that is being presented to you, and not just stopping at the negative point, but instead getting the revelation about the totality of the picture.
Absolutely.
All right. For those of you who are just joining in, welcome. We've been talking today with Eso Tarot, Madison. You can subscribe to her channel there. I will take some time to re-listen to this and link all of the reference decks and books below this video. So if you're catching this past the live date, or if you're live with me now and you just want to come back to catch the decks, I'll link them below the video. Give me about 24 hours to do that. Hopefully it'll be in the next 2 to 3. And you'll be able to access the resources she's provided. Madison, I cannot thank you enough for being a part of Shadow Work Week. You've provided so much great insight, lots of levity into a very heavy topic for a lot of people. We have the new moon in Pisces coming up pretty soon here next week, which is going to be super emo. It's already emo for a lot of people. I can't wait to see what you publish to go with it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. It's just so fun.
Yeah, totally. You're very welcome. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is K Moon. I am a twin flame channel and Western astrologer, and you can catch me here on the new and full moons with channeled insight and guidance tied to the astrological influences and the occasional channeled message in the channeled message section of the channel. Tomorrow, I will be joined by Charlotte of Happy Twins 1111 at 2 o'clock Eastern. Check a time zone converter for your local time. And we're going to talk about embracing the things that you cannot change in yourself, life, and others. That is a huge part of integrating the shadow. Thanks everyone for being here. Please hit that like button on your way out. It was a treat to be with you, Madison. Thank you so much.
Awesome.